folks, and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. And tonight we got a great show for you. With the dogs howling out back, we bring you the greatest show on earth with my co-host, Hawkeye Two Feathers, David Null. Thank you for being here.
Greetings and blessings as always. Happy Tuesday to y'all, and to you too. You know, we're all howling at the moon. We greet you as always with the love and the honor of the infinite Creator, and of course, we always pray that you will continue to accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, the wisdom, and the many blessings from the universe. And with that said, let me give you a little bit of tidbit here. Our story for tonight is what is it? Frog, the moon and his frog wife.
Yes.
So we're still on those stories from about Glooskap. So back to you, Robert.
Oh, tonight we got a great show for you. We're going to be talking about some stuff. This book that I got, and it's called The Adventures with Indians. And there was a good story in there. It just amazed me. Well, actually, there's two stories we're going to go through tonight. They're very short stories, but it's just a testament of how tough people were. And boy, were they tough back in the day. We're all softies.
Yeah, we are.
We are. Yes, we are
well,
soft.
Thank you.
And so let's see, where do we go from here? Okay, so let me pick out the stuff here. And this is I did some searching and I found this so we can all read along. This is called The Attack on Haver Hill. I think this is what.
Do we know where Haver Hill is?
It's in Massachusetts somewhere, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's up that way. Anybody would know it'd probably be Lucky Stone. He's out that way. Haber Hill. I think it's Haber Hill. So anyway, so I found the book online. Even my old book, as old as it is, believe it or not, somebody put it online. So we're gonna go to.
Oh, great!
Yeah, so we can all read along here, and I'm gonna kind of, emphasize a little bit on some of this. There's Chris Smith and Elderberry. What's up? What's up? Hello, everyone. Hello. Anyway, there we go. Hawkeyes. Anyway, good deal. Good to see you all tonight. Oh boy, this is going to be an interesting story. It's about two little kids. And as soon as I can get the right screen for this, I can blow this up a little bit. And there we go. And I can actually turn pages with this and stuff too. So like so, which I thought was really cool.
Stuck on your mouth.
Oh, wait a minute. This ain't the right one. Sorry.
It's the left one.
Yeah, I went too far. Huh. I read the story, and then I can't find the right page. I thought I had the right page, but apparently I did not. This one's the Baba Sheila. I read so many of these. This one's supposed to. It's supposed to be the one just before that. Attack on Haver Hill. Okay. I guess this is the one. Maybe I started reading at the wrong time. No, this is not the one. This is the wrong one. Anyway, well, fill me in. What has been up in your week here? So I can catch up my story here.
Nothing much. Things have been halfway normal, I guess you could say. I went to my heart doctor's, and I still got a heart. It's still beating, but I'm having issues with my blood pressure going all over the place. And I've been taking my meds and do what I'm supposed to do, but it's still fluctuating. So we just keeping an eye on it. But one of the things that I found out is back in December they did a tilt table test with me,
Yeah.
and I did not get my results back until the other day, and I have neurocardio something syncope. And
Hmm.
what it means is that when I stand up, my blood pressure changes, and it doesn't matter whether it's if I just stood up or I'm walking across the floor, my blood pressure will change and I faint. So that's my new recommendations for why I'm dizzy all the time. So I'm looking into how to treat it, and let me tell you, it's weird. And one of the things to help it out is to hang your head upside down off the edge of the bed for a few minutes every day, and they suggest a couple of times a day. So it's a humongously long word, but apparently a bunch of people have it. So,
Oh, really?
oh yeah, and some people, if they've not had the tilt table test, they don't know how bad their situation is. But people will stand up and go, "Oh, I've got vertigo." Well, it's like vertigo plus. It's not just a little bit of wobbly. It's, oh, holy crap! I'm gonna go. I'm gonna hit the floor.
Ah,
And,
yeah.
and vertigo don't quite, at least for me, it's like woo, and then it's over. But this goes woo woo and keeps on going. But also in that, when I talked with the cardiac person, I was like, so I stand up and I get my bearings, and then I take a few steps, and then I want to faint. She said it'll happen. It doesn't matter whether you just stood up or not. If, for example, like for me, and I got it really bad. that's
Yeah.
that's the one test I have flunked badly. But that even walking across the floor, my blood pressure can change, and boink, down I go. So anyway, that's good information, because for me, I was wondering why I was dizzy all the time.
Yeah.
There you
Yeah.
go.
That's There you go. Well, then you just take it easy, and I guess I messed up on these pages. So, but anyway, I got it now,
You
so we're
found
good.
it? Okay.
Yes, I did.
Did
It
I
was
yap long
after.
enough?
Yes, you did. It was after the main story I wanted to read. We're gonna do Baba Sheila tonight, but I wanted to get this story because it was pretty interesting about two kids. Um, and here was the autumn of 1695. This is called A Remarkable Escape from the Indians. Again, this is from Haverhill, Massachusetts. And it's when the Indians,
1695?
1695.
Well, I thought I heard that wrong.
Yeah, this is a long time ago, but we're talking about how tough people were back then. And it's kind of about the white people, but it's kind of about the Indians too. The Indians, as we have discussed in the past, that they like to take little children and turn them into Indians because they couldn't replace their numbers fast enough. So they would, take white kids and make them into Indians and teach them their ways, and so forth and so on. But anyway, get back to um, Isaac Bradley. He was 15 years old, and Joseph Whitaker, aged 11. And without attempting further violence, the Indians quickly retreated and passed through the adjoining forests and reached their tribes on the shores of Winnipitski. Winnipitski? I guess that's the name of the lake. Well, the prisoners were treated with kindness. They did. They treated their prisoners with kindness, the children, because, they were going to try to make them into Indians. Um, They became members of a family, which 2 or 3 Indian children. They soon learned the Indian language and circumstance. They were pleased to be with the tribe. Then it was resolved to carry them to Canada in the ensuing spring. The elder boy, who was an active, enterprising disposition, he was kind of scared about all of this. He had an unbroken wilderness. They were deep into the wilderness. We'll just put it that way. They were carried further north, and their likelihood of ever again reaching home, Isaac determined an attempt to escape. And before returning of the spring, night and day, while apparently asleep, or while apparently cheerful in obeying the commands of his master, he had adopted and rejected various plans which might affect the wished for purpose and the anxiety of mind brought on by a raging fever, from which he narrowly escaped with his life. The gloomy winter of the New England forest came on, month after month, slowly glided away, and in the spring they returned, and still the 2 boys were prisoners. Well, we'll just say that these boys were learning the Indian ways. They learned how to speak their language. They knew the Indians. They made friends. And the Indians were going to take them to Canada. Lucky says, the lake is an hour away. How about that? Right there in your backyard. Well, Isaac came up with a plan. And so one night, him and his brother, they decided, basically his brother, because Isaac was the oldest, he said, I'm going to find an escape plan. And they waited till the dark of night. And as they were traveling now to Canada. It was April. And as they got there early, they decided to leave around midnight. So Isaac woke up and he snuck over and he got his brother up, woke him up, and he says, come on. They stole some food and some supplies, and they put them in a little bag, and away they went. And they ran through the night, didn't disturb the Indians, and they ran and ran. They secured, I'll pick up here. They secured their booty, which was the food, without chart or compass, and struck out into the woods in a southerly direction. So these kids had nothing but the clothes on their back and a little bit of food that they snuck away with. And they, after running all night, and at daylight, they could hear the howl. They finally stopped at a hollow log. And they got in this hollow log, and they could hear, they knew their masters were after them. And they could hear the dogs coming. Now, you can't escape dogs. If the dogs are hunting you, you're not going to escape them. They can follow you anywhere. Well, the dogs did find them, but the boys gave them some of their booty, which was some moose meat, and the dogs ate the moose meat and decided that, hey, this is good stuff, and we know these boys because, they've been living with the Indians. They knew the dogs. So the dogs quit barking, and the boys jumped out of the log and started running again. Well, they ran and ran, and they left the log. They heard it in another direction. After consuming their small stock of bread that was left in the bag, or goodie bag, they gathered some roots and buds. The next day, again, they concealed themselves, but they traveled a third day and night without resting. Now, how many young kids could do that nowadays? David, what do you think about that?
Oh, shoot. 90% of them couldn't even stand outside, let alone go for, a couple of hours, let alone 3 days.
Yeah, no food, eating roots and a little bit of bread. And I just thought that. Okay, so.
And I would suggest that Also, water wasn't necessarily readily available unless they had a skin. But
Yep,
but still, you're subject to the creek water.
that's right. So let's get back to our story here. They traveled the third night without resting. Kids nowadays would never do that. They would lay down. They would, I'm tired. My feet hurt. Yeah. Well, anyway, in this manner, they journeyed 5 days, living partly on roots and partly on a pigeon and a turtle. Now, I bet you they didn't make a campfire and cook it either. And they were obliged to eat raw. Eat it raw. Yeah. Okay. Here, brother. I caught you a pigeon. Here, I'll just rip off the wings and you just start chowing down.
Here we got a turtle, one leg for you and one for me.
Yeah, turtles are not the cleanest animals either way. Anyway, on the sixth day, they struck into an Indian path and they followed it till night, when they suddenly came within sight of an encampment within which was their enemies, and they were seated around a fire. They retraced their steps and oops. Where's my cursor? Here, they retraced their steps, but the elder boy, they leaned on one upon the other, and they mingled with their tears with the ripples of the careless stream. Yep. So they had, they're running in circles basically. They didn't know where they were going. The elder boy did not despair, knowing that the stream must eventually lead to a larger body of water. He encouraged his companion, his brother, after refreshing themselves. Of course, they needed water, like you were saying, and they both pushed forward, following the stream, of course. On the eighth morning, now they're 8 days out of running and running and running. His younger brother Joseph laid down, and he couldn't go anymore. His limbs were mangled. His body was emancipated. Isaac begged him to produce
emaciated.
Emaciated. Isaac.
Emancipated. That'd be like the slaves of. Never mind.
I know. Isaac begged him to proceed. He dug roots for him to eat and brought him water to quench his thirst. Now, what kind of roots are you eating? You're eating them raw. I don't even know if they had a knife. Anyway, he represented the certainty of death should he remain there. It was vain, and leaving his companion to his fate, he, with weary steps and a bleeding heart, pursued his lonely journey. Suddenly, he came in sight of a small building. Inspired by hope, he hurried back to his companion, urged him to another trial, and rubbed his stiffened limbs until they could once more sustain their accustomed weight. They started together, and Isaac sometimes leading, sometimes carrying his companion. Now he's carrying his brother until, after toiling all day, they reached Fort Saco, the Saco Fort. Well, after extraordinary escapes from Indians, we have on record, during the 9 days, the two youths, one scarcely emerged from childhood, had traveled through an immense forest, sustaining on little bread, on buds, berries, and a little raw turtle and pigeon. Without seeing the face of a friend or warming themselves near a fire, they arrived at Fort Saco. They were lacerated by thorns, exhausted by sickness, and emancipated to skeletons. When Isaac regained his strength, he started for Haverhill and arrived safely at his father's dwelling. Joseph had more to suffer. For a long time, he lay at Saco, suffering under raging fever. So his brother's sick. Now his father, when Isaac returned, went to the fort and as soon as possible brought his long-lost son, after, months and months of being with the Indians, brought him home. Wow. So there you go. That's the short story about the two boys who traveled and traveled and traveled, and ain't that something?
Yeah. And there are more than one story if you were to go back into the day, because it was basically happening all the time.
Yeah.
You know, if the natives could, you know, see a child, you know, they'd skid them, boy. And
Yeah.
so this was more common than not. You know, there's this single story going back, but you know, so
Well,
just
the thing
keep
is
that in mind. Is there, you know, this was just a single story of what happened back then, and not everybody was as fortunate to, you know, after 7 or 8 days to make it to a fort, or could they make it 7 or 8 days in the wilderness themselves? But as you say, for the topic of this, they were really hardy back in those days.
Well, yeah. And besides that, you know, all that running and then, you know, eating very little, probably drinking very little. And then, like they said, they arrived as skeletons. And then the one boy was sick. I just think of the whole thing and I think, oh, you know, tough kids. You know, being at the young age, amazing they could do that kind of stuff. And what would have happened? My question is, you know, this is the story of 2 kids that actually made it to the fort. What happened if they would have got caught by the Indians? Would they have been killed for disobeying or leaving?
They probably would have been reprimanded. Let's say that.
Probably beaten.
And it would depend upon the tribe as to what that, you know, and the chief. The chief might go, you know, hey guys, you know, come on, you know. And then another chief might say, off with their head. So, but why would you chase them to just kill them? I mean, so with that said, if they were going to chase them down, then they wanted them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, they probably would have beat them severely or something to teach them a lesson. That's what they kind of do. Who knows? Maybe they would have. Yeah, I don't know. Really, we can only wonder. But our next story here is, our next story here is of a guy. In his name, well, we only know it as Baba Sheila as a story name, and he goes by an actual name of Mr. J.H. of Cornwall. This is an historic event from a real guy. And Mr. Caitlin, who has wrote plenty of books and did a lot of pictures, you know the Caitlin pictures of the Indians. Anyway, we're going to tell this story. Mr. Caitlin, who gives the following narrative of a thrilling adventure which took place while he was exhibiting a party of Iowa Indians at his exhibition rooms in London. Now, it was common practice back in the day to gather up Indians and take them, you know, to foreign lands and then have them do the Indian dances and show their culture, kind of like a Buffalo, early version of the Buffalo Bill Wild West show. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So here you got this exhibition. The night of this memorable day, I had announced as the last night of the Indians at the Egyptian Hall. Arrangements have been effected for this exhibition to be made a few days at the Vauxhall Gardens. Before leaving London for some of the provincial towns, this announcement, of course, brought a dense crowd into the hall, and it is, as usual, many of my old friends, I mean Caitlin's old friends, to take their last gaze at the Indians. The amusements were proceeding this evening as on former occasions when a sudden excitement was raised in the following manner. In the midst of one of their noisy dances, the war chief threw himself with a violent jump and a yell of a shrill war whoop to the corner of the platform, where he landed on his feet in a half-crouching position with his eyes and one of his forefingers fixed upon something that attracted his whole attention. And in the distant part of the crowd, the dance stopped. The eyes of all the Indians, and of course those of most of the crowd, were attracted to, at some point, the eyes of the old war chief were standing open, and in full blaze upon the object before him, which nobody could well imagine, from his expression, to be anything less than excitement, than a huge panther or a grizzly bear, in the act of springing upon him and staring a while, and then shifting his weight upon the other leg and taking a moment to wink for the relief of his eyes, he resumed the intensity of his gaze upon the object before him and in the crowd, and was indulging during a minute or two in dead silence for the events of 20 or 30 years to run through his mind, when he slowly straightened up to a more confident position with his eyes relaxed but still fixed upon their object, when in an emphatic and ejaculatory tone he pronounced the bewildering word Baba Sheila, and it repeated it. Baba Sheila! Yes, I'm Baba Sheila, my good old friend. I knew your voice as soon as you spoke, though you don't understand English yet. Chi, Umunga, Tigawaki, Washigi Waki, Baba Sheila. My friends, will you allow me to move towards that good old fellow? He knows me. At which the old chief, not of 100, but of many battles, gave a yell and a leap from the platform and took his faithful friend Baba Sheila in his arms, and after a lapse of 30 years, he had the pleasure of warming his cheeks against that of one of his oldest and dearest friends, one whose heart had since found had been tired and trusted and often requited in the midst of the dense and distant wilderness of the banks of the Mississippi and the Missouri. While this extraordinary interview was proceeding, all ideas of the dance were for a time lost sight of, and while these veterans were rapidly and mutually reciting the evidence of their bygone days of attachment, there came a stimulus from all parts of the room for an interpretation of their conversation, which I gave as far as I could understand it, and as far as it had been proceeded thus. The old sachem, in leading off his favorite war dance, suddenly fixed his eye upon a face in the crowd, which he instantly recognized and gazed upon in a moment, and decided that it was the well-known face of his old friend, with whom he had spent many happy days in his early life on the banks of the Mississippi and the Missouri rivers in America. The old chief, by appealing to his gentleman's familiar Indian cognomen of Baba Sheila, brought out an instant proof of the correctness of his recognition. And as he held him by both hands to make proof doubly strong, he made much merit upon the party of the Indians by asking him if he had ever floated down any part of the great Mississippi River in the night, astride of 2 huge logs of wood, with his legs hanging in the water, to which Baba Sheila instantly replied in the affirmative, after which and several medicine phrases and Masonic grips and signs had passed between them. The dance was resumed, and the rest of the story, as well as other anecdotes of the life of these extraordinary personages, posted to the proper time and place when and where the reader will be assured to hear them. The exhibition for the evening being over, Baba Sheila was taken home with the Indians to their lodgings to smoke a pipe with them, and having had the curiosity to be of a party, I was enabled to gather the following further information. This Baba Sheila, Mr. J.H., a native of Cornwall, who is now spending the latter part of his independent bachelor life among his friends in London, left his native country as long ago as the year 1805, and making his way, like many other bold adventurers, across the Allegheny Mountains in America, descended into the great and almost boundless valley of the Mississippi in hopes by his infallible industry and daring enterprises to share in the products that must find their way from the fertile wilderness valley to civilized world. Well, we're going to stop there for a second. I'm going to tell you about this guy. This guy, Mr. J.H. Cornwall, an inventor on American frontier, he was a real man. Mr. Cornwall in 1805 ventured across the Allegheny Mountains into a vast Mississippi Valley where he was an independent frontiersman, a bold adventurer who traveled the great rivers like the Ohio and the Mississippi, the Missouri and the Arkansas by canoe, because that's how they got around, and in flatboats in search of opportunity. Over roughly 30 years in America, Mr. J.H., because we really don't know his whole name, that's the only name they gave him. Nothing ever was really written about this guy, but apparently he knew everyone and been everywhere.
John Henry.
Yeah, literally. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the people he knew and how he got to know them. And he became acquainted with various native tribes, frontier figures, and in fact, Caitlin hints that Mr. J.H.'s Western exploits interceded with notable events and people. A chapter in Caitlin's, he had a doomed wedding party, which was Baba Sheila's first start with the Indians. And he saved Mr. Zebulon Pike, who was an explorer, and he even met up with Daniel Boone and his son. So this guy was well connected. He witnessed or participated in significant frontier episodes during the early 1800s. By the 1840s, of course, Mr. J.H. said, "I had enough." He returned to England, living out his latter years as a bachelor of comfortable means in London. So he must have struck it rich in America. Anyway, in this book, they never give Mr. J.H.'s full name, and no matter how much I looked, I could find no record of his real identity, even though in this book they do show a picture of him. Anyway, so we'll have to move on. Thus,
yeah, but that picture could be AI generated, you know.
No. This is.
I'm kidding.
Oh yeah, this is Caitlin. This picture that was there in this book was Caitlin's own drawing of the man. So no computer generation there.
No, I was kidding.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Everything is AI. Never mind.
Yeah, everything is AI.
It was a joke, son. It was a joke.
I didn't get it right away. I'm a little slow at that. Mr. J, this guy remains a figure known primarily for the extraordinary reunion Caitlin describes. Caitlin included this picture of him in this book. So this story does have significance. Now we're going to go on to Baba Sheila. What is Baba Sheila anyway?
Wait. Can I, before I forget?
Yes, go ahead.
Who was the guy? Pike? Zachary, what?
Yes. So this Baba Sheila guy.
Yeah, but wait. Before the was he was a famous explorer?
Yeah, Zebulon Pike.
Okay, Zebulon. Okay, so Zebulon. Might he be the guy that found Pike's Peak?
That I do not know.
Okay, because when you said it and an explorer, I was like, wasn't too many folks back then that ran into each other. So, but I just wanted to put that out there. Okay, I'm sorry. Go on.
We'll find out who Zebulon Pike is. But anyway, Zebulon Pike, they were having a wedding, and this guy J.H. was met up with some Indians, and that's where he first met these Indians. And there's a story behind that. We're going to get that in a second, but that he saved the wedding party and saved Zebulon Pike. and therefore Zebulon Pike became this, famous explorer. Okay. Let's see, where were we? Okay, Baba Sheila. The most famous thing about this was he got Mr. JH was had this unexpected reunion with the Native American chief in London. It was described first by George Catlin and later repeated in this book that I have right here by John Frost in the mid 1840s. That tells you how old this book is. A group of Iowa Indians, they traveled to Europe to appear in exhibitions. These bands was led by Miu Hushika, or White Cloud, a chief of the Iowa, along with other leaders such as Walking, I can't even pronounce him, so I'm just going to, his name was Walking Rain, a war chief. This group of 14 Iowa Indians arrived in London between 1844 and 1845 to perform traditional dances and lifeways as part of George Catlin's Indian Gallery show. So George Catlin was kind of doing the Buffalo Bill Wild West show long before Buffalo Bill.
And also, what did you say, 1844, 1845?
Yes.
And also, that was way early as far as the exhibitions go, because, it was another almost 50 years before they really started doing it again. So, but anyway, so my point is that Catlin was ahead of his time. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Remember, George Catlin, he had a band, a group, and before the West was even conquered, just a little bit after Lewis and Clark, he went out somewhere in the 1820s or 30s and traveled all across the nation, and he was an artist, and he drew pictures, mostly the pictures that we have today of all these Indians. It's a lot of the pictures I use on my show here. He drew the pictures of all these Indians before they died out, and before they got hooping mad and tried to kill all the white people too.
Before they tried to defend themselves.
Exactly, because in the early 1800s, and the Indians didn't hate the white man for taking their land or anything like that. They wanted to trade and get these new tools and things, and clothes and cloth, and we talked about all those things, and they would trade the pelts, and that's how. But once the pelts ran out, and then the white man came along and took their land, the Indians weren't so friendly anymore. Anyway, George Catlin got these. He was this artist, and he lived among the tribes. He arranged these exhibitions to raise awareness and funds for these Indians. And White Cloud hoped to raise money for his struggling nation by touring with Catlin's show. So, the Indians finally started knowing the thing about money. And as you know, Iowa was conquered off. And so now you know where the state of Iowa gets its name. There you go, from the Indians, the Iowa Indians. During these performances at London's Egyptian Hall, the Iowa war chief, Walking Rain, suddenly stopped in mid-dance and stared at the crowd like he was seeing a ghost. And of course, the audience witnessed this. The old chief locked eyes on the gentleman, shouted out the word Baba Sheila. And to everyone's astonishment, the gentleman responded, exclaiming the old chief and affirming his identity as Baba Sheila. Anyway, in an instant, they became clear that the two men, the elderly Native American chief and the Cornish-born Englishman, were old friends. They rushed towards each other, embraced each other with a warming cheek to cheek, and after 30 years apart. The crowd, initially bewildered, demanded this explanation, and Catlin, who was present, gave the audience what they wanted. J.H. Was the very man the chief called Baba Sheila, and their friendship went back decades. And Mr. J.H. in his youth in the American wilderness had spent many happy days of his early life on the banks of the Mississippi and Missouri rivers in America. The war chief of Walking Rain instantly recognized him, called out to him, Baba Sheila. Baba Sheila meaning friend. And of course, he knew the name and answered back, and he knew. And he floated down the river, hanging his legs in the water. Okay, this was the first meeting of the two men in 1815 or so. Anyway, the Englishman and the native warrior together in the wilderness, surviving that escapade, forged a bond between them. The Iowa chief took Mr. J.H. into his tribe as a trusted friend or brother, and J.H. lived among his people for a time. According to Caitlin's further narrative, the frontier bond was formalized with a ceremony. The chief presented Mr. J.H. with a shishi-quin, a sacred rattle, initiating him as a honorary medicine brother of the tribe. I think they did that quite often when they made friends, don't you think?
It depended on the friend and how strong it was.
Okay.
So I mean, there were friends that came up and stayed a day, and then there were people who stayed a month and became, what I mean? So there were friends, more like an acquaintance friend where he was a live-in friend. He became family because he lived with them.
Yep. Okay.
So that makes it, a little bit more, you might give an arrowhead out to your buddy that comes up every once in a while, but you're going to give something special to the guy that lived with you.
I see. So Mr. J.H. became a medicine brother of the tribe, and in turn, Mr. J.H. bestowed the chief a special name, Shishi-Kwa Migan, commemorating the rattle. Decades later in London, Walking Rain's first question for his friend were about the old token. Had Baba Sheila kept the rattle? To which Mr. J.H. admitted that, with regret, it had been lost in a boat wreck on the Cumberland River so many years ago. The chief good-naturedly forgave this because apparently I searched into this, that if you lost this gift, it was like a very big insult to lose this. But they were so happy to see each other, he kind of forgave him. And what mattered the most was their brotherhood.
Right, and it also depended, if he was in a boat and the boat wrecked, it's different than just, misplacing the thing.
Yeah, right. I threw it away a long time ago.
Or you just waylaid it somewhere and just didn't care. So, but he would explain that to him and say, "Listen, man, we had a bad wreck. We lost all our stuff and on the river, and and the chief would have understood that."
Yep. Well, that night, Baba Sheila went home with the Iowa delegation, and they smoked pipes in celebration of the remarkable reunion. And Caitlin notes that the Circle of Indians and even the American and British associates, they listened with amusement and tears as the two old friends recounted the frontier adventure late into the night. For historical reasons here, we can go back and collaborate with the chief's visit to London. So this really happened. The Iowa troops' presence in the 1840s London was well documented by Caitlin and others. And Caitlin's own account of adventures of the Ojibwe and Iowa Indians in England, France, and Belgium in 1848 describes the detail the Iowa's performances in London, meeting with the delegates and even tragedies, so forth and so on. In the National Gallery of Arts notes the White Clouds Band of 14 Iowas arrived in 1844 and 45 and gave demonstrations of dances and culture at Caitlin's exhibition, hoping to raise money for their tribe's welfare. Okay, well, so Caitlin was an eyewitness. This was recorded, and And Walking Rain was there. He was the one that spotted the Baba Sheila. Anyway, so it was documented in this book. And of course, we're going to go on. Baba Sheila is described as a Choctaw word, meaning good friend or brotherly friend. The Choctaw language was spoken by the Choctaw people of the southeastern United States, around
down here in my area.
Yeah, in Mississippi, Alabama. And the term Baba Sheila was used as an affectionate form of address. For example, a 19th century Mississippi publication explains that Baba Sheila is Choctaw salutation, meaning good friend. Okay, let's see. It goes on about the Baba Sheila is a Choctaw word for good friend, a short calling. Someone Baba Sheila is equivalent to calling them a true friend. And it's significant that a chief from the Iowa tribe, who are from the Great Plains or the Midwest, not the Southeast, would use a Choctaw word for the nickname an Englishman. This suggests few possibilities that the word Baba Sheila may have been learned and used in intertribal contexts as a general term for trusted friend.
Duh.
So yeah, well, it's just kind of neat because even languages were crossing back in the day. You know what I mean? It just tells you that
they came up with similar words. I mean, all of the tribes knew what Washishu meant.
Yeah, exactly.
White man. Exactly. So and Baba, yeah, that would have just, it would have rubbed off from person to person to person to tribe to tribe to tribe. And
yeah.
It's interesting. It's Choctaw, but a lot of those tribes came south for the wintertime and would fish along the Florida coast, the panhandle down here. And then they'd go back in the wintertime. So, it's not hard to think that, some of them folks from up north had trade deals with the folks from down here. So, and the word friend would have been probably one of the first words they learned between them. So, yes.
Yeah.
And you know what? Something else too. Lord knows how long they had been using that word, intertribal.
Yep.
Because trade's been going on around here for centuries, with north and south. Not necessarily migration would be right. Wintertime they come south, summertime they go north. They still do it,
Yep. The Iowa, they had probably adopted by a Baba Sheila word, mingling with the other Indians. The Iowa who encountered him on the Missouri River, if you don't know where the Missouri River is, look it up, people. Used that name rather than his English name.
Missouri.
Well, yeah. His English name, cementing it as his identity in native circles. So he carried that name along. When the chief shouted out Baba Sheila, he was essentially calling out good friend to the man in the crowd. The bond expressed,
and the man in the crowd is J.H.
Yes, J.H. He was
right.
shouting out the J.H.
You can kind of get lost as to who the man in the crowd is, but we're still talking about J.H.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the Choctaw word has survived half a lifetime and bridged vast different worlds from Mississippi River campfire to the halls of the Victorian in London. Anyway, like it just tells you. So with all of that, we're going to get back to the story here real quick because we're going to jump into. We're going to go to here. In the first, so now Caitlin's interviewing Mr. J.H., right? In the first evening interview over the pipe, my friend, Mr. H., to the great amusement of the party of Indians and of Daniel and the squaws who had gathered around us, and several of my London friends related the story of the floating down the Mississippi River on 2 logs of wood. This is how Mr. J.H. became Baba Sheila and met the Indians. This good old fellow and I formed our first acquaintance in a very curious way. And when you hear me relate the manner of it, I am quite sure you will know how to account for this recognition. This evening, and for the pleasure we have both felt at thus expected meeting. In the year 1806, I happened to be on a visit to St. Louis, hence proceeded up the Missouri to the mouth of Femme Osage to pay a visit to my old friend Daniel Boone, who had a short time before left his farm in Kentucky and settled on the banks of the Missouri in the heart of an entire wilderness to avoid the constant annoyance of the neighbors who had flocked into the country around him in Kentucky.
I'm sorry. Give me a second.
Yeah, I know.
I had not learned until now that Daniel Boone had moved, but there are, out in Missouri, there's a Daniel Boone National Forest and Mark Twain anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, too many neighbors in Kentucky. That's funny.
It tells how many neighbors he has after we get down here a little bit, but I just couldn't believe that. I made a big deal of it myself. I thought, oh my gosh, we gotta do this. The place for this future abode, which he had selected, was a rich, fertile country, 40 or 50 miles from any white inhabitants, where he determined to spend the remainder of his days, believing that for the rest of his life he would be no more annoyed by the familiarity of neighbors. 40 or 50 miles away was plenty good for him to be from society. Like you were saying here, oh my gosh. Yeah, 40 or 50 miles, there's my nearest neighbor, we're good. But, here's the but. I spent several weeks very pleasantly with the old pioneer, who had intentionally built his log cabin so small, with only one room and one bed for himself and his wife, that even his best friends should not break upon the sacred retirement of his house at night. But having shared his hospitable board during the day, were we referred to the cabin of his son, Nathan Boone, about 400 yards distance, where an extra room and an extra bed afforded them the means of passing the night. Now, at this point, Daniel Boone's pretty old. The old hunter and his son were thus living very happily and made me comfortable and happy while I was with them. The anecdotes of his extraordinary life, which were talked over for amusement during that time, were enough to fill a volume. The venerable old man, whose long and flowing locks were silvery white, was then in his 78th year, and still he almost daily took down his trusty rifle from its hooks in the morning, and in a little time would bring back a saddle of venison for our breakfast. And thus he chiefly supported his affectionate old lady and himself, with a few friends who found their way to his solitary abode without concern or care for the future. Now, I'm going to stop right there for a second. He's 78 years old. And every day he takes down his gun and he goes hunting. Now, Hawkeye, how old are you?
72.
Did you go hunting and take down your gun and go out there and walk through the woods and, or ride your horse, a saddle of venison? It means he probably took his horse, and shoot a deer every day and bring it back. And if he lived in that house with his old lady at 78, how old was his son? His son had to be at least 60.
Probably, yeah.
And he lived 50 miles away.
But also, I think it's a little far-fetched. He did not shoot a deer a day. They couldn't eat that much venison. I mean, a deer a week. Now, he might go out hunting for a deer, but I seriously doubt that he shot one a day, nor would he you know,
Yeah.
because that's that Daniel Boone. He just would not have. That would have been literally. It would have been overkill.
It would have. Yes, I do agree. Okay. Well, let's see. Where we go? A
But did he
stump.
go hunting every day? Absolutely. What else was he going to do?
Yeah,
You
well, he
know?
lived 40 to 50 miles away from the nearest settlement or people. And anyway, so
Yeah,
now
they couldn't just go to the store.
no,
You
they
know, there
couldn't.
wasn't no 7-Elevens around.
And he made sure that he lived so far away from everybody that only his true friends would stumble along the trail to come and visit him.
And there was no room at the inn.
That's right. You have to
You
sleep
could
in the.
stay outside, you could sleep on the porch, but you weren't coming in the house for the night.
That's right.
That's
I'm
one way to keep relatives away.
well, and that's another thing. Boy, you really got to be determined if you want to go visit him. You got to go 50 miles in the middle of the wilderness to find him. Okay, we're going to go on about his house. The stump of a large cottonwood tree, which had been cut down, was left standing in the ground and being cut square off at the top, and his cabin being built around it answered the purpose of a table in the center of his cabin, from which our meals were eaten. When I made my visit to him, he had been living several years in this retired state and had been perfectly happy in the undisturbed solitude of the wilderness, but told me several times, you're going to get a kick out of this, that he was becoming very uneasy and distressed, as he found that his days of peace were nearly over, as two Yankee families had already found the way into the country, and one of them had actually settled within 9 miles of him. 9 miles! Oh my God, the world is ending. Your nearest neighbor is 9 miles away. I don't know if there's enough room there, eh?
And Yankees, what are you going to do?
Oh my
Damn
God.
Yankees, you know.
And they're settling in. My neighbor, I got a neighbor 9 miles away. I might have to move. I'm 78. I'm going to have to build a new cabin. Son of a gun.
9 miles away.
Having finished my visit to this veteran and his son, I mounted my horse and, taking leave, followed an Indian trail to the town of St. Charles, some 30 or 40 miles below on the north banks of the Missouri. I here visited some old friends with whom I had become acquainted on the lower Mississippi in former years, and intended to descend the river from that to St. Louis by boat. Had sold my horse when I arrived there. Before I was ready to embark, however, an old friend of mine, Lieutenant Pike, who had just returned from his exploring expedition to the Rocky Mountains, had passed up.
There, didn't I say Pike's Peak? Keep going.
Yeah, Lucky did post this part. Zebulon Pike's expedition in 1806. Pike's party attempted to climb the mountain, but failed, and it was later named after him. Thank you, Lucky.
I was right.
You was right.
Thank you, Lucky.
Yes. He passed from St. Louis to a small settlement formed on the east bank of, where was it? Of the Mississippi, and a few miles below the mouth of the Missouri, to attend a wedding, which was this J.H. Baba Sheila is going to go attend this wedding. Attend a wedding was
they've come back from England now, right?
No, this was before he went to England.
Okay, all right, I caught up.
Back in the old days. So he visited Daniel Boone, and now he was going to go visit his friend Zebulon Pike to attend a wedding, which was to take place on the very evening that I had received the information of it. And like myself, being intimately acquainted with the young man who was to be married, I resolved to be present if possible. Though I had no invitation to attend, it not being known to the parties that I was in that part of the country. The spot where the wedding was to take place being on the bank of the river and on my route to St. Louis, I endeavored to procure a canoe for the purpose, but not being able to get such a thing in St. Charles at that time for love or money, and still resolved to be at the wedding. I succeeded in rolling a couple of large logs into the stream, which lay upon the shore in front of the village, and lashing them firmly together, took a paddle from the first boat that I could meet, and seating myself astride the two logs, I pushed off into the muddy current of the Mississippi, and was soon swept away out of sight out of St. Charles. My embarkation was a little before sundown, and having 15 or 20 miles to float before I should be upon the waters of the Mississippi. I was in the midst of my journey, overtaken by night, and had no way to navigate my floating logs as well as I could among the snags and sandbars that fell in my way. I was lucky, however, in escaping all of them, though sometimes grazed them as I passed within a few inches of being hurled into destruction. At a length entered the broad waters of the Mississippi, and a few miles below on the left. Okay. This guy is got to be brave as can be. As you can see here, he just put two logs together, he tied them up, and he says, I'm just going to float down the river and into the Mississippi. I mean, you could get caught by a whirlpool or a snag or sandbar, and you would be stuck there you could die. Don't you realize how dangerous this is?
Well, back in those days, they had a lot of rafts, and it wasn't nothing for folks to lash some trees together and go floating. So but to the point though, he was bound and determined to be there, and it does show how innovative they were and how dadgum, I could see doing it in the daytime, but the dummy pushed off at 5 o'clock in the evening kind of thing, what?
Yeah.
But anyway, so
let's float down the Missouri and into the Mississippi in the middle of the night. No worries. I got to get to that wedding. Oh boy. Talk about a dumbass,
I was not going to say that, but
oh my gosh, you're not in, we think about things nowadays and nobody in their right mind would do it. And the, the boats and stuff go down it and it's all, cleared off and everything. But back in those days, it was take your chances.
Yeah. When the sandbars and snags, and now I have been crazy enough, not recently, to go down the Ocklawaha River in the middle of the night, and I have done that many times.
Yeah.
And so, when you said that he grazed a snag by inches, I know what that's like. You go, oh man, I almost hit that. you know, and the only light that you have is literally starlight,
Starlight,
and back
moonlight.
then I can imagine that there wasn't any kind of lights anywhere that would block out starlight. And once you get your eyes adjusted, starlight's pretty bright, actually.
Yeah, but just think, you're hanging your feet into the water there. Now, back in those days,
no
good-sized
doubt.
turtle.
No doubt.
And it's probably not warm either. It's probably freezing cold after a while. I mean, you can put your feet in the water for an hour or two, but you're going to get cold. And at night, it's colder yet. Let me get going. And all he has is a paddle. Okay, so on the bank, I saw the light in the cabins in which the merry circle of my friends were assembled. He made it to the place, and with all my might was plying my paddle to propel my two logs to the shore. In the midst of my hard struggle, I discovered several objects on my right and ahead of me, which seemed to be rapidly approaching me, and I concluded that I was drifting onto rocks or snags that were in a moment to destroy me. And again, you're in the dark, you idiot. Yeah, he couldn't even see that far ahead. But in an instant, one of these supposed snags silently shot along by my side of my logs, and being a canoe with 4 Indians in it, and all with their bows and war clubs drawn upon me, they gave the signal for silence. As one of them, a tall, long-armed, and powerful man, seized me by the collar. Having partially learned several of the languages of the Indian tribes bordering the Mississippi, I understood him as he, in the Iowa tongue or language, not a word. If you speak, you die. At that moment, a dozen or more canoes were all drawn close around my 2 logs of wood, astride of which I sat, with my legs in the water up to my knees. These canoes were filled with warriors, with their weapons in their hands, and no women being with them. I saw that they were a war party and preparing for some mischief. Finding that I understood their language and could speak a few words with them, the warrior, who still held on to me by the collar, made a sign to the other canoes to fall back a little while he addressed me in a low voice. Do you know the white chief who is visiting his friends this night on the bank yonder, where we see the lights? To which I replied, yes, he is an old friend. He's an old friend of mine. Well, he said, he dies tonight, and all of those wigwams are to be laid in ashes. Senokutoka was a cousin of mine, and Kinuka was a good man and a friend to the white people. The pale faces hung them like 2 dogs by their necks, and the life of your friend, the white warrior, pays the forfeit for his night. And many may be the women and the children who will die by his side. I explained to him, as well as I could, that my friend Lieutenant Pike had no hand in the execution of the 2 Indians, that they were hung below St. Louis when Lieutenant Pike was on his way home from the Rocky Mountains. I told him that Lieutenant Pike was a great friend of the Indians and would do anything to aid or please them, that he had gone over the river that night to attend the wedding of a friend, and little dreamed that among the Indians he had any enemies who would raise their hands against him. My friend said, you have said enough. If you tell me that your friend or the enemy of any man takes the hand of a fair daughter on the ground tonight, an Iowa chief will not offend the Great Spirit by raising the war cry there. Well, you know, the Indians did have some honor, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
No Iowa.
For as much as they were called savages, there was almost a morality, if you will, an honor.
Yeah, exactly. And he goes on and says, no Iowa can spill blood of the enemy on the ground where the hands and hearts of man and woman are joined together. This is the command of the Great Spirit, and an Iowa warrior cannot break it. My friend, these warriors you see around me with myself have sworn to kill the first human being we met on our war excursion. We shall not harm you. So you see that I give you your life. You will therefore keep your lips shut, and we will return in peace to our village, where it is far up the river, and we shall thereafter meet our friends, the white people, in the great city, as we have therefore done, and we have many friends there. We shall do no harm to anyone. My face is now blackened, and the night is dark. Therefore you cannot know me. But put this arrow you will keep. It matches with the others in my quiver, and by it you can always recognize me. But the meaning of this night is not to be known. He gave me the arrow, and with these words turned his canoe, and joining his companions, was in a moment out of sight. My arrow being passed under my hat, band, and finding that the current had by this time drifted me down a mile or two below the place where I was designed to land and beyond the power of reaching it with my two awkward logs of wood. I steered my course onward towards St. Louis, rapidly gliding over the surface of the broad river, and arrived safely at the shore in front of the town at a late hour in the night. Having drifted a distance of more than 35 miles, my two logs were an ample price for a night's lodging and a breakfast and dinner the next day. And I continued my voyage to Mackinac boat, or in a Mackinac boat on the same day to Vivid Pooch, a small French town about 20 miles below where my business required my presence. The wedding party proceeded undisturbed, and the danger they had been in was never known to them, as I promised the war chief. Okay, so this is where he gets to be Baba Sheila, the chief who gave me this condition of my silence, the solemn promise that he would never carry his feelings of revenge upon innocent persons any farther. Thus ends the story of the floating down the Mississippi River on the two logs of wood, which were war chief alluded to be the question he put me to this evening. On the subsequent occasion, some 2 or 3 years afterwards, while sitting in an office of Governor Clark, the superintendent of Indian Affairs in St. Louis, where he was holding a talk with a party of Indians, a fine-looking fellow of 6 feet or more in stature fixed his eyes intently upon me, and after scanning me closely for a few moments, advanced and seating himself on the floor by my side, pronounced the word Baba Sheila, and asked me if I had ever received an arrow from the quiver of an Indian warrior. The mutual recognition took place by my acknowledging the fact that a shake of the hand and an amusing conversation about the circumstances, and still the facts that the amusement all kept to ourselves. This step led to the future familiarities of our lives in various places where the nature of my business led me to his society, and gained for me the regular adoption as Baba Sheila, or brother, and the badge, the She-She-Quin, or mystery rattle, alluded to the previous remarks, in which it has been already stated that was lost in the sinking of one of my boats on the Cumberland River. And we're not going to go into the rest of that. Oh, that is the end of the story. But anyway, that is the whole point. So he got he had got this rattle. He stayed with the Indians, but the Indian chief had given them this broken arrow as a symbol, because he couldn't see his face or he didn't know who he was, and says, "Here, take my arrow, and it's unlike anybody else's, and that way you will know me." And
it's a business card.
Like a business card, yeah. And of course, a few years later, they met up and became good friends, and as long as he kept the secret, and life was good. That was his inn. Who would have thought that floating down the river in the middle of the night on 2 logs would gain you a friendship and a name of Baba Sheila for the rest of your life? And of course,
on the Mississippi River, not just not just any river, the biggest river in the United States, the Mississippi.
Yeah, I mean, talk about the things. And that Indian was the Indian that met him in the thing, and that was who was this? Let me try to get back to my notes of which guy that was. Which Indian was it? There's a whole bunch of these Indians. Good chief, Walking Rain, and medicine chief. Trying to find the name of that chief. Whichever was. So many notes here. Anyway, the war chief, Walking Rain. That's the one. Walking Rain. Had spent many years of their life in the ranks of Mississippi American. Walking Rain. So Walking Rain was the guy who gave him the broken arrow. So now it all starts making sense, because you get this story, and he's traveling around, and he's a young man, and he must have met up with the Indians. And when he did, he must have got a foothold in trade, and that's how he must have made his money, because that's how they were all making money, is by trading with the Indians, for pelts and furs and all kinds of good stuff like that.
Yep, all kinds of good stuff. Yep.
Lucky says Baba Sheila is a Choctaw word for friend. Choctaw Nation has two distinct branches, the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma and the Choctaw Nation of Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana. So there you go. Thank you, Lucky.
And Georgia. There's a lot of Choctaws down around this area.
Yep. So that is, what do you think of that story? I mean, the unsung traders and nobodies that probably roamed our wilderness back in the day, making friends with the Indians, doing the trading, knowing the famous people like Daniel Boone. Can you imagine being that guy? Oh, I know Daniel Boone and Zebulon Pike, and I've been in Indian battles, and I know Walking Rain, and oh my gosh, you like rub shoulders with all the famous people that were out there. What a fascinating thing.
Yeah, and back then they were well known, and Daniel Boone, of course, was sort of a hero, if you will. And Zebulon Pike, when he met him at that time, wasn't a hero yet.
Well, but he was well known for going in 1806, going to the Rocky Mountains and
right. Well, but what I mean is that he met him, and then on his way back, so he hadn't really gotten famous by that time.
Yeah.
But it was right after that he got really famous. But to them, they were just like, oh man, it's good to meet you, buddy. Heard a lot about you, your reputation precedes you, kind of thing, But I don't think they knew then that their names were going to go down in history the way that they have, which is a good thing, But that is funny about Daniel Boone. My neighbors are 9 miles away. I don't know if I can stand it. And they're Yankees.
I was going to skip that part, but then I laughed so hard, just like you did, when I was like, I moved 40 or 50 miles away from civilization. I could just see him. I moved so I could be in peace. And I just learned that I got some Yankee neighbors that moved in about 9 miles away. You know what? I'm going to have to move again. I'm just thinking in my head, like, there's no roads. Nobody's got like this big highway next to your house.
There wasn't even a trail hardly.
Exactly. And like, who's coming to visit you? What, your neighbor 9 miles away is going to come over and say, you got a cup of sugar I can borrow? I just happened to get up this morning, walk 9 miles, see if you had a cup of sugar. The kids, I can see them now. The kids are always coming over here, banging on my door, running around chasing the chickens and the dogs, and then they just run home 9 miles away. I chase them out, but they just keep coming back. You know what I'm saying?
I chased them dogs. They're stealing my eggs,
Yeah. 9 miles away. Anyway, I hope y'all out there enjoyed that little bit, because I sure did. It looks like we don't got a lot of people here tonight, but either way, we are on the road to the story of the night. What do you think of that?
Yep.
So there you go.
Segue
into it. Now, people, don't forget to go over to Nina's channel. Oops, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Go over to Nina's channel and go over to her Streamlabs. You don't have to go to channel. The link is in the description below. And go over and get yourself one of these mugs with my mug on it. Ain't this kind of cool? Get yourself a mug with my mug on it. Or you can get one of these Anakarana stickers. Or you can get one of these really cool stickers and stick it on everything you got with my mug on it. Ain't that cool? I just love it. Or you can get one of these t-shirts with my mug on it too. Remember, limited time only. And then pretty soon, big breaking news, there's going to be new shirts. And if David ever sends me a picture, we'll with Native American myths and legends on them. I thought you were going to give me a picture. What happened?
Yeah, I forgot. And then I got busy. Then I go.
Well,
I got to find one that's decent that'll look good on the T-shirt. You know.
Well, find one, make one, whatever you got to do, but
Yep.
get one, and then we will get some T-shirts. I know Chloe will be buying a T-shirt with your face on it, saying David Null, Hawkeye Two Feathers, or just go buy Hawkeye, just Hawkeye.
Yeah.
T-shirt. There you go. Good deal. Anyway, okay, it's all up to you now.
All right. And by the way, I've already chosen the cards for tonight. So as soon as I get done with this, I've already got the cards. So hang on out for a few more minutes. So we ready? Are we ready, Freddie?
Yes, you're ready. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm on my another page and I can't see the thing. Okay. So our story for tonight, picking up where we left off, I'm still reading from the book Glooskap's Country and Other Indian Tales by Cyrus Macmillan, 1922. Tonight's story is The Moon and His Frog Wife. When Glooskap first reigned upon the earth, what is now the moon shone by day, and what is now the sun shone by night. Their work was exactly opposite to what it is today, for the present moon was then the sun, and the present sun was then the moon. The moon was then very red and bright. The sun was pale and silvery. At that time, the sun, the present moon, kept very irregular hours and was very careless about his work. Sometimes he rose very early in the morning and set very late at night. At other times, he rose very late and went to bed very early. For weeks in the winter, he refused to shine at all. And even when he did appear at his work, he gave very little warmth, and he might just as well have been covered in his clouds. The moon, the present sun, was on the other hand always faithful to his duties. At last, the people grew tired of the sun's strange actions and irregularities. They protested loudly against his methods of work, until in the end, they sent some of their number to complain to Glooskap. Glooskap rebuked the sun, but the latter answered that he had done his work as well as he could, and that his accusers were merely his enemies. Glooskap had really been too busy to notice the sun's way of working, so that he might treat all with fairness, he said to the accusers, "Charge the sun formally and openly with neglect of his duty. I will call a great meeting of all my people. We will hold a trial to judge him. I myself will be the judge. Whoever wants to give evidence may do so, and the sun may make his defense." To this, all the people and the sun agreed. Now, in those days, the sun had many wives. With some of them, he was far from happy, for often they sorely tormented him and tried his patience. And a few of them he would gladly get rid of if he could. One of his scolding wives was Frog. She had crumpled back, she had a crumpled back and a wrinkled face and a harsh voice. She was always jumping about, and with her, all of his wives, he was on the least of friendly terms. When she heard that her husband was to be tried before Glooskap on a serious charge, she wished to be present at the trial, for she was very inquisitive. But the sun said, "This trial is for men, not for women. Your place is at home and not in the courts of warriors. You must not come." The frog wife pleaded to be allowed to go, but the more she pleaded, the more sternly the sun refused his permission. However, being a woman and not to be outdone by a man, she resolved to go to the trial whether her husband permitted it or not. And she decided to steal into the court quietly after the trial had commenced. At last, the day of the trial arrived. The great court tent was filled with Glooskap's people. In the center of the platform sat Glooskap, and near him sat the sun, eager to defend himself from the charges of his enemies. When the trial was well advanced and the evidence had nearly all been taken, the sun's frog wife appeared suddenly at the door. All the seats were filled, but Glooskap, with his usual politeness, arose to find her a place. But when the sun saw her there, contrary to his wishes, he was very angry. He looked at her sternly with a frown, making at her a wry, twisted face. And drawing down his right eyelid, he said to Glooskap, "Oh, master, do not trouble yourself to find her a seat. Let her sit on my eyelid. That is a good enough seat for her. She can hang there well enough, for she always wants to stick to me and follow me wherever I go." And at once the frog wife jumped to his eyelid and sat there quite comfortably. Then the trial went on. Because of the son's clever defense of himself, he was declared not guilty of the charges against him. It was decided by the judge, Glooskap, and all the people, even the accusers, agreed that under the circumstances he had done his work as well as he could, and that he deserved neither blame nor punishment. But at the close of the trial, when the son attempted to go back to his work, he could not get rid of his frog wife. He tried with all his might, but he could not shake her off. She was stuck fast to his eyelid and stubbornly refused to leave her seat. And she said that henceforth she would stay with him to see that he did his work well. All the people pulled and tugged and coaxed, but they failed to move her. The strongest men in the land came, but even they could not pull her away. Then the people lamented and said to Glooskap, "She covers the side of the sun's face and hinders his work. She makes him ugly. We must not have our light of day disfigured like this and bright on one side only, all the world will laugh at us. What are we to do?" And they were in great sorrow and distress. But Glooskap, in his wisdom, found a way out of the difficulty. He said, "Be not troubled, O my people. We will make the moon and the sun change places. The moon, who is still perfect and unharmed, shall become the light of day instead of night, and shall take the name sun. The sun shall become the light of night instead of day, and shall take the name moon. For at night it will matter little if one side of his face is dark, and his frog wife hanging to his eyelid will be by night will be little noticed." To this the people all agreed, and so the sun was changed with the moon to shine by night, and the moon was changed with the sun to shine by day. So now when the moon, the old sun, first appears at his work, he holds away from the earth the side of his face to which his frog wife is hanging, for he is very much ashamed of his appearance. And when he turns his head full upon the earth, you can still see, when the sky is clear, his black frog wife hanging to his right eyelid and covering one side of his face. And always when his month's work is nearly done, he turns his head abruptly in a frantic effort to shake her off, but he never succeeds. She hangs there always, and because of his frog wife's curiosity, he shall never shine again by day. The end. And next week's story is called The First Pig and the Porcupine. Ooh, that porcupine. Porcupine is the Null family crest thingy. So, all right. So get out your pictures. Now, I pulled these cards before the story. Now, the first card,
Honey Boy showed up just in time, didn't he?
The first card up is Swan, right side up. The second card is Hawk, upside down. Wait, is this right? Yeah, I picked them up this way. Okay. The third card is Skunk, right side up. The fourth card is Opossum, upside down. The fifth card is Elk, and that's a trick card. I'm not sure. I think that one got flipped. The next card is, guess what? Frog.
Frog. Oh, yeah.
So having not, well, I knew about the story with Frog, but I didn't. Having pulled the Frog card, I was just like, that's interesting. Before I read the story, and then there's 7 cards tonight. This last one is the Lynx, or like a bobcat, I guess. It'd be the closest thing you could get. So, with that said, how we doing on time? Oh, not too bad.
We're doing good.
All right, so this is an interesting spread already. Just looking at the fact that, Swan is the first one out, is just, well, you'll see what I mean in a second. Swan is grace. So the first card out tonight is grace. Little Swan was flying through the dream time looking for the future. She rested for a moment in the coolness of the pond, looking for a way to find the entry point into the future. And in a moment of confusion for Swan, she entered the dream time by accident. Swan spoke with Dragonfly, and Dragonfly said, "You must be willing to accept." This is the important part of the why Swan is first. You must be willing to accept whatever the future holds as it is presented to you, without trying to change the Great Spirit's plan. So here's Swan showing up at first. So it's like, in order for us to accept what's in our future, we want to try to go along with Creator's plan. The Swan card is telling you to accept your ability to know what lies ahead. If you are resisting your self-transformation, relax. It will be easier if you go with the flow. Stop denying that you know who is calling when the phone rings. So that's Swan. It's grace. The next one up is Hawk, upside down. So Hawk being the messenger. Yep, Hawk is the messenger and is akin to Mercury, the messenger of the gods. Hawk medicine teaches you to be observant, to look at your surroundings, observe the obvious in everything that you do. Life is always sending you signals. Now, with the upside down, if you pulled the Hawk reversed, it may be because you have shut down your powers of observation on some level, okay? So that means for some reason you got your head down. If something in your life has become too painful, too unbearable, or too dark to see, it is time to examine the point at which you chose to let yourself become emotionally involved. Interesting. And to no longer be the observer. Now, years ago, I talked about the observer point of view. Once you become emotionally involved with something, you can no longer objectively look at something. So, emotional coloring is a tendency of Hawk medicine people when they are off balance. So, the thing you need to do is find a better balance and make sure that, upside down Hawk is, are you hiding something from yourself? Are you not being as observant as you could be or should be? And that's tied to what the grace card is. The grace card, accepting the future. And so the observer upside down, are you accepting the future, or do you have your head down and you're not accepting it? So skunk is reputation. It's all about reputation. Skunk is teaching you that by walking your talk and by respecting yourself, you will create a position of strength and honored reputation. Skunk medicine people have the ability to attract others, and they are very charismatic. So by reputation, so keep your head up. Make sure you're not just looking at the ground. You are, hopefully you're going to accept the plan that creators got for us. And Skunk is saying, keep up the good work because it builds a good reputation. And the next one is Opossum, number 23. Number 23 is diversion. Now, is upside down. And possum is where it's called to play possum. And I always use Duggar as my reference because he'll go outside and shake that possum, and that possum will just lay there. And he'll nudge him again and try to shake him. Possum won't move. You go back out there 5 minutes later, possum's gone. So possum's greatest form of protection is to play dead. That is so true. If possum is turned up in your cards, you are being asked to use strategy in some present situation. Rely upon your instincts for the best way out of a tight corner if you're in one. If you have to pretend to be apathetic or unafraid, do it. Oftentimes, if you refuse to struggle or show that hurtful words bother you, your taunter will see no further fun in the game. Like Duggar, he ain't moving. Okay, never mind. So, but what's in, why this diversion? Upside down, right? Excuse me, turn the page. Possum may be warning you against getting caught in the high drama of your life's present scenario. Close your eyes and dramatize may keep you from seeing the truth of your situation. You may as well play dead if you are trying to justify something that's going on. So, and that would mean that, if you're trying to deny what your future is, right? By the grace of God, what is your future? Now, this next card, I can't tell up right side up or not, is number 3, Elk. This is a strange set of cards tonight, I just want to say. Elk is stamina. I dropped the card, y'all. Hang on. Elk is stamina. Well, where did it go? Oh, I know what the card is, so I don't have to look for it. Elk is stamina. So in this, we have to make sure that, we're not scared away from what we're supposed to be doing, which is our future that's been laid out. Try not to swim against the stream. And Elk is warning us to make sure that we have the stamina. So, Mountain Lion chased Elk, and Mountain Lion gave up because Elk had more stamina. So, but if the card's upside down, you may be stretching the rubber band too much. So I think the cards, for me, and looking at them and the way they're laid out, is that, we need to make sure that we have enough stamina. And at this time, we need to build up our stamina for the future. And the next card up is Frog, and Frog is about cleansing. And so I'm pretty sure, number 38. That's further back. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So Frog is cleansing. So, we need to cleanse ourselves to make sure we're not carrying on any of the past with us, because the future of what is already here and working on is new things. We can revamp old things, but new ideas, better thoughts, and hopefully hope for the future for people. So let me bring it back. So we got, by the grace of God, we are going to, follow Creator's plan and do the best we can. Um, Hawk is telling us to keep our eyes open and not down to the ground. Skunk is saying, keep working hard and we will be known by our reputations. Possum is saying, don't get turned away by our, what we're supposed to be doing by diversion. We need to build up our stamina, as Elk says, and in this, we need to cleanse ourselves from things in the past that we don't drag them into the future. Does that make sense? And the last one is links, and I don't know where that card went to. It just absolutely disappeared on the floor. I got to look it up here in the index. Hang on, y'all. Link's medicine is difficult because of 109, number 18. Oh, Link's medicine is secrets. So Lynx is the keeper of the secrets of lost magical systems and occult knowledge. Lynx medicine is a very specific type of clairvoyance. And I would say that in cleansing yourself through all of these things for the future, Lynx is telling you to be ready for secrets to be told. If you pulled the Lynx card, you can be sure that secrets are afoot and afloat. If Lynx is at your door, listen. Brother or sister, Lynx can teach you of your personal power and of things you have forgotten about yourself and about your past lives and future lives. So, wow, 7 cards tonight, eh? So how'd I do on time? Not too bad. So I'm going to go over it one more time. The swan is grace, and accepting the plan Creator has for us, which is try to live in peace for the future, right? Hawk says keep your head up, keep being observant. Skunk says keep walking while you're working and keep your reputation up. That's important, especially going into the future. Possum is don't be scared away by some kind of diversion somebody else is trying to throw at you to knock you off your spiritual path or life path or whatever. And Elk is telling you get some stamina and don't overdo it. Frog saying clean yourself up, don't take anything in the future with you. And Lynx is saying that secrets are afloat. Boy, that's an understatement. So there you go, my friends.
That's right. There you go. Well, thank you for the great cards and the good story. I see everybody enjoyed.
Yeah. I don't know what I did with that. That card just fell, but where?
It's gone. It's gone. Awesome cards. Yes.
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, for there being 7 of them, I know I'm probably getting better at reading the things, but it just seems like, wow, those, as odd as there it is, as odd as the cards seem when I first look at them, I go, this is strange as heck. How are these cards going to fit together? What is the message here? That was easy to pick out tonight. So,
yeah.
But anyway, so I thank you all for listening. I appreciate, every time we get together that y'all will sit and listen to the story, and will wait patiently for me to pick the cards. So thank you as always to our dear patrons out there.
Mhm.
Blessings to you.
Got one for all you people out there in YouTube land. We wouldn't have a show, but we could. We enjoy coming on every week. I tell you, I look forward to this day, more than any other time of the week. I plan and I study and work hard to bring you all a great bit of history and some little tidbit here and there, and I learn along the way. And thank you for your great insight, Hawkeye. I tell you, that's sometimes I get going on stuff and I forget about those little things, and that's where I really appreciate your thoughts on that, because sometimes it's just get to rambling, and it's better you pick out those little things I might forget.
Yeah, and I just come up with dumb stuff.
It's not
no,
dumb.
but I mean, that was cool earlier when you mentioned Pike, and I was like, oh, that's got to be the Pike's Peak guy,
Yeah. Well, I
was amazed, because I mean, you mean I was right?
And that's the funny thing too, is when I was thinking about I wasn't thinking about Pike's Peak. I really wasn't. I thought about that can't be the guy. I'm going to have to look him up. I never realized that he climbed Pike's Peak in 1806. I mean, that's like right after Lewis and Clark. I mean, wow.
Yeah, he followed them out there, almost, right on their heels.
Yeah, I know. I really am amazed by some of these people. Like, and it's just to think about how short a time ago that was, that these guys were meeting up with Daniel Boone. Didn't realize that Daniel Boone was still alive at that time. We think of him in the 1700s, at least I do, but really he lived into the 1800s, and people were, that's really not that long ago.
Especially for the American history.
Yeah.
And we need to keep doing what we're doing, because there are places like Wikipedias and things that, I say the people in charge is supposed to be like an open forum kind of thing, but there are a lot of things that are being changed, and a lot of things that are just being deleted, And so by having these conversations, you with old books, and I've got some old books here myself, we tell the stories that's in print, for as much as, years ago, it was like, oh, we're going to be able to look at anything on the internet, and we'll be able to fact check. And no, not when there are, organizations and individuals who are deleting things, for whatever reason. Oh, we don't want that part of history to, go out there. We can't talk about them damn savage Indians in a good light. No. They massacred, Custer, and they did all these mean, bad, and nasty things. We took over that land, because by rights it belonged to the United States, and they were trespassers, and we had every right to shoot them, kill them, and get rid of them, just like any other vermin. And that's how people felt.
Yeah.
Some of them still do, but
Well, the worst part about it is that people turn to places like Wikipedia, where you could go in there and change things and make history what you want. You can still find the history out there. It's just the fact that a lot of people don't want to look for the history. They'll look to the quickest, fastest place. They'll Google it, and then Google has their own set of history, And then they turn to Wikipedia, and Wikipedia has their version of history. But that's all man-made history again. It's whoever wants to interpret it, like you said. But the old stuff is out there. The real history, the real truth is out there. You just have to now look for it. That's the bad.
It's a lot harder to find it, but it's there. But also with this, from what I've been hearing, reading, and watching about the new different AIs, AI has been lying to them.
Yeah,
that's one of the things they found here. I heard within the last 2 or 3 days is that I know this is off topic, but they have found by doing their cross-checking and stuff that AI has actually lied to them several times when asking a question or whatever. And so it's like, so AI is already being funky. So, and that's going to take over the internet, and it's going to do this, buy a book. The truth is out there. Thank you, Scotty boy.
Yeah. Well, and so here's a good one. When I was doing the research on the Baba Sheila guy, right? I typed it in, and AI told me, there's no such person, So then I typed in the JH from Cornwall. No such person, right? So twice it gave me, an answer. It says there's no such person. Then I typed in, this book, my book here. I said, hey, in this book, I said, it says that George Catlin, talked about this guy, J.H. from Cornwall, on page 266 of, Adventures with Indians by Jack Frost, right? And then it come back and said, oh, you're right. Sorry. Yes, on page 266, it does say Baba Sheila. It does talk about the thing. Then it started to give me all the answers I wanted. But until that point, it said there's no such person, never existed, never heard of him. I had to come up with the proof. And then he was like, oh, yeah, come to think of it, there is. Sorry, you caught me.
Well, and also not only that, but, the Choctaw word.
Yeah. Then it started coming up with all that stuff, but like I said,
but it didn't show it up as the side. I mean, Baba Sheila there could have said no such person, but in Choctaw, blah, blah, blah.
Well, yeah, it did say something like that. It says, yeah,
it gave you an option.
I said, I'm doing a show, Baba Sheila, can you tell me about him? And it said the term Baba Sheila is not associated with a specific individual, but holds cultural and historic significance in different contexts. Of course, it went on about Baba Sheila at college, and Choctaw word, good friend, usage, historical content. It's in the, and it talks about that. And it talks about Baba Sheila at Trenton High School. And then it goes on regarding a man called Baba Sheila. There's no recognized historical figure known as Baba Sheila. And I'm thinking, what? I'm reading in here in this book, there is a figure named Baba Sheila,
Then it should be in the history.
And it talks about the Choctaw origins. He goes on about the history, role in the yearbooks of something or other. Then I said his name was J.H., a native of Cornwall. And it says, based on this information, there isn't a widely recognized historical figure named J.H. from Cornwall associated with the term Baba Sheila. The term Baba Sheila is notably used as a title of yearbooks for institutions like Millsaps College in Mississippi and Trenton Central in New Jersey. It's a Choctaw word, and it goes on good friend. J.H. Mr. JH, who has a significant role in one of these institutions. I'm thinking, no, he doesn't. And then he says, is it a Pacific? Could you please provide more context with this specific individual or story you're referencing? So then I typed in about this book, the page number. Mr. Caitlin tells a story, and he says, "Thank you for your content to help with your show." Da, 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 da. And then it goes on and says, "Oh, you were right. Here is the Baba Sheila thing, And then I says, I would like to know about the background of Mr. JH. And then he goes into all the background, the historical content, and stuff like that. But until I mention this book and what it referred to, it would not give me an answer. So I called out.
Got to be very specific.
Yeah, I did. I had to be pretty specific, because if I wasn't, it would just keep me running around the bush,
Giving you nothing.
Yeah, well, yeah, like it means good friend in Choctaw. Well, that ain't what I want to know, But once I prompted it with the right, but see, again, I had to do the research. I had to do, find out who this guy was and associate him with that name. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, there was a guy. Oh yeah, he's famous. He was in the Caitlin's book. He was this, was that, blah, 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 blah. Here's the story. Here's where you can find the story. Here's where you can find the book. It's like, you knew it all along.
Well, does that mean that because they could find the page number and everything that you referenced, is that book in digital format online?
It was. That's what we were reading off of tonight.
Oh! I thought you were reading out of your book.
No. It gave me a digital form of that book.
Oh, okay. I knew you were. I saw you reading it, but never mind.
That's how I got that. I was like, wow. Here's the book that I have in my hand with the pictures and the same words, the same page numbers, everything on the internet. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. You're right. I forgot about it. I was just thinking hard copy, but to the point. So, but what if there had not been a hard copy, a digital copy of that?
I don't know. I don't know.
It would not have been able to find it.
Maybe.
But because if you hadn't given it the reference, it wouldn't have been able to find it. And it only found it because it was in a digital format. Yeah,
that could be. I don't know for sure. Maybe there's other things out there to reference to that. But once I put them things in, then it was like, oh, it was all over it. But until I put the two together and said, I know, you're calling, I'm calling you out. It didn't want to give me an answer. So, like I said, it's about the prompts. It's about knowing your stuff. And then like I said, you were talking about that. They change history. See, now, if you were just the average day guy and you get on there and you say, hey, I seen this reference about Baba Sheila, and I want to know more. That's all it would tell you. I heard this Indian story, and they probably would have just never told you anything. You know what I mean?
Right. And so that one of the things that I've heard it from other folks too. Folks are worried about the AI was going to take over the world, and they're like, but AI can't find its own butt from a hole in the ground. And it's like you have to tell it where its butt is, and then it can find it. And so it's like, and the things that it seems to be learning at this particular time is just how to be stupid. It's literally been making up answers. There was a lawyer that asked AI to type out a brief for a thing, right? And so it went to court and everything, found out that everything in the brief had been made up by AI. It referenced certain cases that had been tried and certain instances. And when they looked them up, none of it was true. And so, and you know, so there are people who are using AI and stuff like that, and they're not coming up with the right answers. So for all of you out there that are worried about that it's going to take over the world, calm down.
Yeah, well, it's got a ways to go. It's got a ways to go. I do admit that it is really gone a long ways, and it really does help to use it to get some things done. But you can't. You have.
It's getting to the. It's getting to the point though. If you're like that lawyer was depending on the brief to be, you know, correct, and by using information out there, law and so forth, but it made it all up. So it's, you know, you get an answer, but can you trust it?
Yeah,
well, here's the answer, but is it the truth?
You got to go back and double check it.
Oh,
because
you know, it did a really nice job, but yeah, but have you cross-referenced this to some, you know, to some paper?
Yeah, you got to do your homework too. Just because it did all the homework doesn't mean that you shouldn't do any on your own.
That's right.
I mean, if you gave it it's like a calculator. You punch in the numbers, gives you an answer. But should you trust that answer, or are you going to try to use your brain and, oh yeah, it just popped out a bunch of numbers. I wrote them down. And that's how things go really wrong. Anyway.
Thank you, friends, for showing up. We're starting to get long-winded and talk about stupid stuff.
That's right. Let's
wrap it up there. And well, but I want to say, you know, to wrap it all up on our Tuesday nights, early Wednesday morning, that we love you. Thank you for coming out. And, you know, I do continue to pray each and every day that each and every one of you will continue to accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, the wisdom, and the many blessings from the universe. And in the cards tonight, the first card out was grace, accepting what the Creator has for us and not fighting against, you know, against it. So, you know, accept and receive, and thank you.
That's right. Thank you very much. Are you going to have a show tonight?
Maybe.
All right. Sounds good.
It all depends on whether or not, you know, YouTube lets me, you know, connect. So.
Okay. Okay. And with that, everybody go out and do something nice for somebody. Do something nice for yourself. Remember, next week we got 175 on our way to 200. Woo-hoo! The hot dog. Join us then as we come up with some more great stuff. Remember, everybody, make the week a great week by being the frequency you want to receive, everyone. Love y'all. Peace, everybody.
Cheers.